So with over 500,000 people suffering from workplace stress in the UK alone, could practicing mindfulness maybe help? In today's hyper-connected, always-on, socially networked, Twitter this, Insta that, like this, thumbs up, it's no wonder we're fighting a daily, if not hourly, if not minute, if not second by second battle against the lure of email and social media alerts and kind of so many things pulling us in every which direction. So in today's video, I'm going to share with you the attention hijackers to really watch out for. And more importantly, I'm going to give you 5 tips to help you go from being zany to a bit more zen. Before we go any further though, make sure you hit subscribe and so you'll get a new video from me every Friday sharing psychology-based tips to help you thrive and kind of grow your confidence at work and in your career. My name's Hayley Lewis. I'm a business psychologist and I've worked with thousands of managers and leaders over the years, helping them grow their confidence, motivate their teams and go on to even better levels of performance than they could have dreamed of. You know, work can be tough. It doesn't matter if you work inside a big organisation as a paid employee or you're your own boss. Every day we're all kind of being pulled in lots of different directions. So mindfulness hijacker number 1 for us all to kind of watch out for is email. So researchers at Michigan State University found that managers struggle to keep up with email. That's no surprise. So not only did this mean that they felt they weren't keeping on top of things and felt like they were failing, it also impacted how their team members saw them, which then in turn kind of threatened their team members' performance. And a Loughborough University study found that on average people take around 29 minutes per day just reading email. That's not writing a response, that's not processing them. Literally just reading email takes 29 minutes on average per day, and I'd say you could probably double that for some people in some organisations. And they found that for a company of around 3,000 people who had a pretty high reliance on email, so used email quite a lot, it cost an organisation of around 3,000 people £9 million a year just to read emails. Think about that, £9 million a year just to read that email that tells you something that somebody could have picked up the phone and told you, or maybe they didn't need to tell you at all. So mindfulness hijacker number 2 is interruptions by other people. So we know that lots of businesses have kind of got on the open plan kind of environment, hoopla if you like, because it's all about collaboration and kind of helping people kind of share ideas in an easier way. But there's a downside to open plan in that kind of you're always on, you know, you're always kind of at the risk of somebody kind of just emerging at the side of your desk and asking, could you just? And researchers at the University of California in Irvine found it takes around 23 minutes to get back to what you were originally doing after you've been interrupted. So it's no wonder that so many of us are taking work home, doing work on our commute, so doing work on the train. Obviously if you drive, not necessarily a good thing to be responding to your emails, but it means that our working day is becoming longer and longer and longer. Mindfulness hijacker number 3 is social media. So I don't know about you, I love a bit of social media, and I have to work really, really hard to kind of not be drawn to that little icon that pops up. So I've turned off all my alerts on the phone, for example. But researchers at the University of Amsterdam conducted a study to examine the effect of social media use at work, and they worked with or kind of carried out research on around 360 employees from consultancy organisations, but also a large telecoms organisation. And while they found that people's use of personal social media, so being able to, for example, jump on Facebook at lunchtime, while they found kind of personal social media use actually enabled higher levels of autonomy, freedom, if you like, actually made people feel that they were respected and given freedom, and helped them engage more. They also found that those employees who were regularly kind of jumping on their personal social media feeds during the working day also felt more pressure, and as a result were more likely to be exhausted by the end of the day. So look, I'm not saying ban social media at work, far from it, but there is something around almost carving out pockets of time for it rather than kind of distracting and fragmenting our attention, because that's exhausting. The fourth hijacker to watch out for is unnecessary meetings. This is without a doubt the thing that drives me insane. So certainly when I worked in a leadership role in a corporate organisation, this was the thing that killed me. Every day was being invited to meetings where there was no agenda. People weren't even clear why they were inviting me. I think they were inviting me because of my role. So studies by Harvard University, City University, the London School of Economics, they've all shown that on average we spend around 31 hours a month in unnecessary meetings. 31 hours a month. That's almost a working week. Think of what you could do with that time. You could go on holiday. You could have your lunch break. Spend a bit more time with your friends and family. I don't know, but you could do something far better than going to unproductive meetings. And a study by Epsom and Sieber in 2012 found that meetings cost the UK economy around £26 billion a year. That's just the UK. That's not all the other countries in the world. Just one country, £26 billion a year is wasted on unproductive meetings. That's crazy. And look, this isn't just about big organisations. So for those of you who are watching who might be running a small business, there might just be a few of you, doesn't matter. Research also shows that pointless meetings can cost SMEs around £1 million a year in the UK alone. Again, in the UK alone, that's not taking into account all the other countries in the world. So look, so we know kind of those hijackers to watch out for, but what can we do about them? So here are my 5 tips to help you kick those attention hijackers to the curb. So number 1 is you could set a timer at various points during the day to take what we call a vigilance break. So Daniel Pink, in his latest book, which came out last year, and the book's called When: The Scientific Secrets of Perfect Timing, advises us to take a step back with a vigilance break. So he gives the example of the University of Michigan's medical school. And one of the teams in the medical school, before surgery begins, each member of the surgical team takes a physical step back from the table that the patient's laying on, and they introduce themselves to each other, even though they know each other, and they go through a 9-step pre-induction checklist. That's about them getting their heads in the game. Doesn't matter that they've done these procedures many, many times before and that they know each other. It's a physical and psychological act of getting your head in the game, and so that you pay full attention to what you're doing. they do this again just before the surgeon makes the first incision. So again, they're kind of always paying attention to what they're doing, which you'd hope if you were the person on the table. And one of the professors and the chief surgeon, he has said that since bringing in this approach, the quality of care has gone up, complications have gone down, doctors and patients and nurses are more at ease with each other and what's going on, and that can only be a good thing, right? So why not try a vigilance break? Tip number 2, take your lunch breaks. I cannot say this enough, and I say this to lots of bosses I work with across all sorts of organisations. Take your lunch breaks in order to get some physical and psychological distance from what it is you're doing. So research by a woman called Christine Bosch, as well as her colleagues, explored the impact of taking a lunch break on our well-being and performance. So researchers looked at the responses of over 100 people who took daily surveys, kind of kept regular diaries, all of which tracked their emotion, their mood and their performance. And what the researchers found is the extent to which someone felt recovered had a really positive impact on their ability to do good work in the afternoon. So not only did lunch breaks help people feel more energised, it actually helped improve their performance and help them be more engaged with each other. So take your lunch break. Number 3 is block out quiet times in your day. So this again is something that I find really useful. I used to do it when I worked in a corporate role. I would carve out blocks of time each day where I'd go and sit somewhere quiet to kind of do my deep work, and I do it now as a business owner. So Professor Leslie Perlow of Harvard University, she worked with a company of burnt out and underperforming engineers, and the reason these engineers were burnt out is because they were constantly being pulled away from their own work in order to help each other. So it was a Silicon Valley organisation, big open plan, and so the kind of people were interrupting each other and asking each other for help constantly, and that's a good thing. But the downside is it meant that these engineers were feeling so stretched, they were taking work home, they just weren't keeping on top of their own work because they were so busy helping kind of colleagues. And so one of the things that Leslie and her research team did that helped is she helped these engineers create dedicated windows of quiet time and then dedicated windows of interaction time. And subsequently, this had a huge positive impact on the engineers' productivity and, more importantly, their stress levels. So number 4 is the worth your time test. So Peter Bregman wrote a great article about this in the Harvard Business Review, and he suggests that when someone comes along and asks you to help out with something, before that kind of automatic, almost Pavlovian, yes, I'll help without thinking about it, he suggests just pause and ask yourself 3 questions. Am I the right person? You know, am I actually the right person to do this? Is this actually the right time, the best time to be doing this? And do I have enough information in order to give my best help? And then you can ask that other person that as well, rather than just that reactive, as I say, Pavlovian, yes, I'll help. And the 5th tip is take a power pause. So Anne Purcell, she's known as the Biz Shrink on Twitter. She wrote a brilliant blog post at the end of 2018 about using a power pause. So as a way to help us when we're under stress, when it's all feeling a bit kind of overwhelming and a bit much. So essentially the power pause is a focus on our breath. And a really good way to do this is use what I call the 4x4 approach. So you breathe in for a count of 4 seconds, you hold for 4 seconds, you breathe out for 4 seconds, and you do this 4 times. And you'll be amazed at just how this can calm your stress levels down. And so I'll end with a quote from one of my favourite books that I've read in the last year. So it's Chris Bailey's book, The Productivity Project. And he says, mindfulness is simply the art of doing one thing at a time. So what one thing are you going to do to be a bit more mindful? So I hope you found this helpful. And if you liked this video, if you've not already subscribed to my channel, subscribe now. More importantly, give it a big old thumbs up. And if any of the tips interested you or any of the research interested you, tell me about it in the comments below. So I hope you found that helpful, and I'll see you next Friday.